Okay, let's do this thing. So, again, tonight we are going to talk about some D&D rules clarification. Let me take my glasses off so you can see me better. We are going to talk about some rules clarification and go through some often misunderstood D&D rules for 5th edition. And again, we're going to talk about my Patreon for D&D and RPG videos, which I just launched. I get constant feedback that my D&D videos are helpful to people. And I mean, every time I put a video up, somebody's like, thank you so much. They're so helpful. And people ask me to keep making them. Can you make more? Can you do them more often? Well, it's kind of hard with everything I have going on in my life to make these videos because by the time I record them and edit them and put in the information that I want for them to be helpful, it can be a real time sucker. And, you know, I've got full-time job. I have a family to support. I also have other shame play stuff I do, radio, podcast, blog, all that. So I want to keep making these. And so what I'm trying to do is I've received so much feedback that people want these videos, these D&D videos and RPG videos that I make. And I'm like, well, let's work together. And if we can get, it's not a huge amount. I'm not trying to get rich, but if I can bring in enough via Patreon to justify putting other stuff to the side and working on it, then I'll do the videos more regularly. Now, let me be real clear that it's they're going to keep coming. The videos are going to keep coming. I just can't promise a regularity or once every 2 weeks or once every 3 weeks or once every month. I've been trying for a while to do once a month, and I've had a hard time meeting that schedule. So I want to be real clear. This is not something saying, hey, you give me money or I'm not making the videos anymore. That is not what's happening here. It's instead, it's me saying if we can work together, I'll try to make them more regularly. That's all this Patreon is about. Like I said, I'm not trying to get rich or trying to, strong arm anybody for their money. People can literally, the Patreon is set up as a monthly, not a per creation. So people can literally support for as little as $1 a month. That's the lowest tier. It's like, goes like $1, $3, $5, and that sort of thing. In fact, I realized that I haven't put the link to the Patreon. So let me do that real quick so that people can find it. I'm going to put that in the chat. Okay, so that's in the chat. So if anybody wants to check out the Patreon, and we'll look at it more together here in a little while. But first I want to do some rules clarification because I don't want to just talk about the Patreon. That's, I want there to be value to your time here besides just me blabbing about the Patreon. But bottom line, if I can get to $25 a month, I've got one Patreon already, even without really doing an announcement, which I appreciate very much. You supported at $5 a month. So $20 more a month, and I will dedicate to doing at least one RPG/D&D video per month. And maybe more if I can, but that will be my minimum. And there's some other tiers we'll talk about here in a little while. So, but first, let's get into the rules crawl. Look at some of the most commonly misunderstood 5e D&D rules. And I'm going to get these from, there's a really good section at the beginning of Xanathar's Guide to Everything that goes over these rules, and it's based on the D&D designers and developers themselves saying, here's the rules that people get confused the most often. So that's what we're gonna use to do this. And if you're watching this, if you have any questions, put them in chat in YouTube, and I'm happy to look up other rules or other questions or whatever stuff kind of on the spot. So let's do a couple of these, and then we'll talk about the Patreon a little bit more. And again, if you're watching, feel free to put something in the chat, and I will take a look. So, and I usually ask the chat, I think I've got a few people watching, 2 or 3. Can you hear me? I usually ask that, and I forgot to ask this time. So if you're watching the video live stream, if you could just say yes or no, or yes, I guess, because if you can't hear me, you won't know what I'm asking. Okay, so here we go. On page 5 of Xanathar's Guide to Everything, there is a 10 rules to remember section. And it says a few rules in the core rulebook sometimes trip up a new player or DM. Here are 10 of those rules. Keeping them in mind will help you interpret the options, in this book. And they're talking about Xanathar's Guide to Everything. But this is very helpful for when you're playing D&D 5e in general. Okay? So here we go. The first one is exceptions supersede general rules. And what it goes on to say is general rules govern each part of the game. And this is a very important point in how D&D works. Jeremy Crawford, who answers a lot of questions about D&D on social media, mentions this a lot. He's really trying to get this point out there to help people be better players and understand the game better. General rules govern each part of the game. For example, the combat rules tell you that melee weapon attacks use strength and ranged weapon attacks use dexterity. That's a general rule, okay? And a general rule is in effect as long as something in the game doesn't explicitly say otherwise. So as long as you don't have something else contradicting that or changing that or superseding that, a general rule is in effect. But the game includes elements like class features, spells, magic items, monster abilities, and the like that sometimes contradict a general rule. When an exception and a general rule disagree, the exception wins. For example, if a feature says you can make melee weapon attacks using your charisma, you can do so even though that statement disagrees with the general rule. So the general rule says strength attacks, melee attacks using strength, range attacks using dex. But you may have a class feature or a spell or something, an ability that says you can make melee weapon attacks using your charisma. That supersedes the general rule. So you don't say, oh, well, I can't do that because, it says strength for melee. Well, no, this feature or spell or ability or whatever it is says you can use charisma. So that will override the general rule. Okay, next, round down. This is number 2 of the 10 rules to remember. Whenever you divide or multiply a number in the game, round down if you end up with a fraction, even if the fraction is 1/2 or greater. So this is D&D math, not real math. Real math, if you're rounding, usually if it's 1/2 or greater, you round up. But in D&D, you always round down if you have a fraction. Okay, so if you're taking 15 points of damage and you make your save, and so you save for half, 1/2 is 7, not 8. Is that right? 7, 4. Yeah, you would take 7 points of damage, not 8 points of damage by the time you round it down for dividing 15 in half. Always round down. Okay, there we go. All right, next one. Advantage and disadvantage. Even if more than one factor gives you advantage or disadvantage on a roll, you only have it once. And if you have advantage and disadvantage on the same roll, they cancel each other out. This is a really important one to remember. If you have, let's say for whatever reason, you have a situation that gives you 4 advantages. Like you get advantage 4 times by the time you only get it once. You only get it once. It doesn't stack. If you get disadvantage 8 times on a roll, you only have disadvantage once. And an advantage disadvantage, of course, is you roll 2 d20s. And if you have advantage, you take the higher of the 2 rolls. If you have disadvantage, you take the lower. That's how it works. Okay. So they also cancel each other out. What that means is if you have advantage and disadvantage on a roll at the exact same time, they cancel each other out and you have neither advantage nor disadvantage. And again, they don't stack. So if you have 8 advantages on one roll, or you think you would have advantage from 8 different reasons, and you have 1 disadvantage reason, it's all canceled out. They don't cancel each other out, right? So you don't have to have 8 advantages and 8 disadvantages to cancel each other out. Any disadvantage will cancel out all advantages, and all advantage will cancel out all disadvantages, and you end up with a roll that has 0, nothing. It's just a regular roll. So that's an important thing to remember. Okay, we'll do one more rule here, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the Patreon for those that are interested in getting these videos on a more regular schedule. So, combining different effects. And again, we're reading the top 10 rules to remember from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. I've actually been wanting to make this video for about 2 years from the first rules crawl that I did 2 years ago. And so for this video tonight, I was like, I really want to do this because I think this stuff is helpful. And it's the things that people miss the most often or get confused on the most often. So next one, combining different effects. This is number 1, 2, 3, 4. We're on the 4th one out of 10. Different game effects can affect a target at the same time. All right. For example, 2 different benefits can give you a bonus to your armor class. But when 2 or more effects have the same proper name, only one of them, the most powerful one, if their benefits aren't identical, applies while the durations of the effects overlap. So this one can get real confusing. You've really got to pay attention to this one. For example, if Bless is cast on you, when you're still under the effect of an earlier Bless, you gain the benefit of only 1 Bless. But you gain the one that's the most powerful. And when that one ends, if there's another effect on you that's still going of the same proper name, then you get the benefit of that one. Not confusing at all, right? Similarly, if you're in the radius of more than 1 aura of protection, you benefit only from the one that grants the highest bonus. So keep in mind that effects, if you have 3 different effects that aren't of the same proper name, giving you advantages or bonuses or whatever, disadvantages, negatives, and they're not the same proper name, they will stack. So 2 different benefits can give you a bonus to your armor class. So if you have one thing giving you +1 to your armor class, and you have another thing that's a different proper name, like Mage Armor and Ring of Protection, right? They're giving you bonuses to your armor class. Those will stack. But if you have 2 Rings of Protection, same proper name, or 2 Mage Armors, same proper name, you only get the benefit of the most powerful. So there you go. All right, we got some more coming, including reaction timing, resistance and vulnerability, proficiency bonus, bonus action spells, concentration, and temporary hit points. We'll get to those here in a second. And again, if you're in chat, feel free, if you say, hey, can you look up this question for me, or how would you handle this question or situation? I'll be happy to talk about it on this video. But what I'm going to do is take a moment, because this is both a rules crawl and I'm announcing the Patreon for these D&D and RPG videos. Here's the link to the Patreon in the chat. You can check that out. And so I've switched the video to where you can see the Patreon here. We'll take a look at that here in a second. And what this is, again, I get constant comments every time I make a D&D or an RPG video. People say, hey, these are really helpful, thank you, when's the next one coming, can you do them more often, that sort of thing. And I've explained a lot that I'll make them as often as I can, but they're hard to get to, but I really appreciate all that feedback, which is why I keep making them. And I was trying to do a monthly schedule, and I haven't been able to do that. So I finally have said, well, I think the best way to do this is to work with the viewers and say, look, if you can work with me, then we can get them out more often. And again, I'm not trying to get rich here. I think if people will look at the tiers and the goals of the Patreon, I'm expecting people to be happy about this because they keep asking for more videos, and this is, I think, a good way to move it forward. So I've been doing this for years and have never asked for any money. I haven't done a Patreon. I do a Patreon for my radio show, but but I've never done a Patreon for my videos. So here we go. If this offends you, I don't know what to say, because I mean the videos will keep going. I just don't know how regularly, and I'm not asking for a lot here. I'm just for the people that are constantly cheering me on and asking me to do more, this is a way for you to kind of help make that happen. And like I said, I get all that feedback on how helpful they are. So maybe we can find 20 people out there that are willing to invest $1 a month. That would get us to the first goal, which is one video per month, guaranteed. So, and sometimes I might supersede that on my own, but that will be a guaranteed minimum. So let's take a look here at the Patreon and see what we have here. And I've put the URL in chat. I'll put it in the video notes after the video is archived. But it's Shane Plays RPG and Tabletop Game Videos. I'm creating D&D RPG and tabletop game videos. You see right here. And what that is it's mainly 90%, 95% is going to be D&D and RPG. Probably like 75% D&D videos and 75% non-D&D, which is, if you look at my video history, that's about what it is anyway. And the other part, it will occasionally be just a tabletop game, like I've done, like BattleTech and a few other things. So, Car Wars, when that new edition comes out, I would love to check out Car Wars. So, but it will almost always be D&D and RPG videos, just to make that clear. Now, the goals that I've set, and you see we're already $5. I have one patron came along and gave $5, which I appreciate very much. And I'm going to give them a shout out in the next D&D and RPG video that we do. Is $25 per month, and at least one D&D or RPG video per month. Okay. Next goal. $75 a month, at least 2 D&D or RPG videos per month. All right. $125 per month, at least 3 D&D or RPG videos per month. And again, this is a monthly, not per creation. So if I pump out some crazy month, I pump out 8 videos, your pledge is the same. So, right, it's a per month. It's not per creation. All right, $150 a month. I will do at least 3 D&D or RPG videos per month, plus a live stream. And the advantage to a live stream is that people can pop in and ask questions, and I'll do my best to answer them during the live stream. I get a lot of questions about running adventures or how rules work or something on my videos. Well, here's where you can get your answer in real time during a live stream. Then we have at $250 a month, I'll do at least 4 D&D or RPG videos per month, plus a live stream. And then at $450 a month, I will do a monthly virtual tabletop, like on Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds or something, RPG session for patrons. So if you're a patron, I will run a monthly adventure, probably not a campaign of ongoing adventures. Maybe, we'll see, but it would be an adventure of some type each month on a virtual tabletop, and I'd be talking with the patron, say, hey, what do you guys want to play? And we could just play nothing but D&D, or we could try out new games or whatever. And I would run a virtual tabletop adventure for patrons. And then on top of that, you would still get at least 4 D&D or RPG videos per month and a live stream. So those are the tiers. I'm going to go back and do some more Q&A on D&D rules, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about, well, no, those are the tiers. Those were the goals, the different goals that I hope to get to, right? From $25 a month up to $450. And again, any amount helps. I'm not trying to get rich here. I'm trying to, kind of work with people who keep asking me to make more videos. And when here in a minute, we'll answer some more questions, and then we'll come back to the tiers that you can support at and what that gets you in addition to the goals. So I see that, we continue to have some live watchers. In addition to the, I'm reading the top 10 rules to remember at the beginning of Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which are really helpful. It's the stuff that the designers and developers of D&D think that, these are the rules that trip people up a lot. So I'm going through these, but if you have something you want me to look it up, just put it in chat, and I'll be happy to answer or look up something for you or give you my opinion on how to do something. So feel free to put that in. And for those of you that are watching live, I appreciate it. If you're not watching live, put it in a comment, and I'll look it up for you and put it in a comment after the fact. So here we go. All right, so we've already covered exceptions, supersede general rules, round down, advantage and disadvantage, and combining different effects. So next is reaction timing. Okay, so certain game features let you take a special action called a reaction in response to some event. Making opportunity attacks and casting the shield spell are two typical uses of reactions, right? If you're unsure when a reaction occurs in relation to its trigger, here's the rule. The reaction happens after its trigger completes, unless the description of the reaction explicitly says otherwise. So if they're like, the thing that triggers the reaction begins, and the player says, okay, well, I do this while they're doing that. Well, no, you have to wait for that thing to complete in order to trigger the reaction, unless the description of the reaction explicitly says otherwise. Once you take a reaction, you can't take another one until the start of your next turn. So unless something else, that's a general rule, unless something comes along that specifically overrides that general rule, then you can only take one reaction. So, if you cast if somebody throws magic missile at you and you throw a shield spell, that's your reaction. And then later somebody in that same turn until, your next turn comes along, somebody leaves your melee threat range, you can't smack them with a reaction. You can't do that melee attack of opportunity because you've already used your reaction to cast shield, or vice versa. Or if you're throwing counterspell, you throw counterspell, then later as a reaction you can't throw shield as a reaction to a magic missile or whatever. So very important. All right, resistance and vulnerability. Here's the order that you apply modifiers to damage. 1, any relevant damage immunity. Okay. 2, any addition or subtraction to the damage. 3, 1 relevant damage resistance, and 4, 1 relevant damage vulnerability. So even if multiple sources give you resistance to a type of damage you're taking, you can only apply resistance to it once. So if you're getting fire damage and you have 3 different ways to resistance to fire damage, you can only do it once. So you can't do resistance, and resistance takes damage and halves it. Invulnerability makes you, or immunity, like you just don't take any damage. But if you're using resistance, say you take 40 points of fire damage, you're like, well, I'm resistant to fire damage. Then you would take 20 points. You can't keep, it's like, well, I also get resistance because I'm a arcane whatever, and my great grandfather twice removed was a dragon. You can't get, you get 1 resistance, period. All right. Same is true of vulnerability. Vulnerability, you take double damage, right? So if you're vulnerable to fire and you take 40 points of damage, then you're going to take 80, I believe is correct. So, and you don't, if you have 3 different ways to be vulnerable, it doesn't keep multiplying. You're either vulnerable or you're not. You're not multiply vulnerable or multiply resistant. So let's look over at this again. Here's the order that you apply modifiers to damage. So let's say that 40 points of damage is coming in of fire damage, and first you apply relevant damage immunity. So if you're immune to fire damage, you apply that immediately. Done. You're not taking any damage. Okay, so that's first thing. After that, if you're not immune, then you do any addition or subtraction to the damage. This isn't vulnerability or immune or resistance. This is like this fire damage is coming in at, for some reason, you take +5 extra fire damage, or you take -5 fire damage for a ring or something. I don't know why. Character feature or something. Then you add that. So if you're not immune, then the damage comes in, and then you do the next thing, which would be add or subtract modifiers to the damage. +3, -2, whatever. All right, and then after that, you can assign a one relevant. So after you've added any modifiers, plus or minus, if applicable, then you can assign a damage resistance and a vulnerability after that. So if you resist, so those 40 points, let's say those you're getting hit with those 40 points, you're not immune. If you are immune, you just stop there. You move to step in, and then if you're not immune, you move to step 2. And let's say for some reason you have a ring that gives you -2 fire damage. I don't know. I don't even know if a ring like that exists. I'm just throwing something out there. So now you take 40 points of damage from fire. You take -2 because of your ring. And so now you're taking 38 points of fire damage. And you know, if you had something that made you take extra damage plus whatever, not immunity or not resistance or vulnerability, but actual pluses or minuses in numbers, modifiers, then you add it then. But at this point, you're taking 38 points of fire damage. Then, if you have a damage resistance, you would apply it. Okay? So let's say you have another ring that gives you resistance to fire. So you're at 38. Now you apply the resistance that divides it in half. So I don't even know what's that. What's half of 38? Like, see, 15, 19? Yeah, so 19. So now you're down to 19 points of damage because of the resistance, right? The resistance. Okay. And then after all that, the fourth step is if you have a vulnerability, you would apply that. Okay? So it sounds like it's possible to have both resistance and vulnerability. So if by some chance you have resistance and vulnerability to fire, then you would, after the resistance took it down to 19, then you would turn right around and apply the vulnerability, and you'd go back up to 38. There you go. Those are the steps. It's like when you do the math with the parentheses and the multiplication and division, and so, you know, you have those orders that you go in. So there you go. And again, this stuff is on page 5 of Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Very, very, very interesting. All right. And let's look at proficiency bonus. If your proficiency bonus applies to a roll, you can add the bonus only once to the roll, even if multiple things in the game say your bonus applies. So your proficiency bonus does not stack, no matter how many different sources or reasons give you that proficiency bonus on a roll. Moreover, if more than one thing tells you to double or have your proficiency bonus, you double it only once or have it only once before applying it. Period. Whether multiplied, divided, or left at its normal value, the bonus can only be used once per roll. So there you go. Proficiency bonus. Once per roll. Period. Divided, added, subtracted, whatever, once per roll. Period. So you can only use it once, and you can only fiddle with it once. So if it tells you to have it more than once, you only have it one time. If it tells you to double it more than once, you only double it one time. I suppose it's possible you could both double it and have it, and then you're like, I don't know, because it doesn't have the exact order steps for that. And then whether you multiply, divide, or leave it at its normal value, after all of that, it's only used on the roll one time. All right, we still have bonus action spells. This comes up a lot. Even with players I have that know this rule, a lot of times we still have to stop and think. And it comes to how many spells can you cast per round? We'll get to that here in a second. Bonus action spells, concentration, and temporary hit points. So we will get to those here in a moment. I want to go back over to the Patreon because this is also a Patreon announcement live stream. And I want to look at, we looked at the goals earlier. I want to look now at the, let me refresh this. La, la, la. These are the tiers that somebody can support at. And I gave 2 different foundational supporter tiers for those people that want to do, like Patreon doesn't even recommend a $1 a month tier, but I put a $1 a month tier in there for the people that, I mean, I understand that, people want to help stuff out, but they don't have a lot of money. I get that. Trust me. Been there many times. So there's $1 a month for, and I can't imagine, based on all the comments that I get and requests for more of these videos, that there are 20 something people out there that don't want to do $1 a month. But if you don't want to, that's fine. I mean, as I said, even if we don't make this Patreon happen and get to at least $25 a month, I'll still make D&D and RPG videos. I'm not going to commit to a minimum monthly. So, and again, I'm not just springing this Patreon out of nowhere. There's so many people have asked me to do more videos and do them more often. So there we go. All right. So, we got the official patron at $1 per month, and we get the, bona fide patron at, $3 per month. And both of those are the foundational supporter. Let's take a look here and see what it says. If it gives the... it's not showing the benefits. I guess you see the benefits after you support. But you will get a shout out in stream or on a video. The next video that I do after you support, I will give you a shout out. And your name will be in the credits of every D&D or RPG video that I do. So that's for both the official patron and the bona fide patron, $1 or $3 a month. Those are essentially the same level of support, but I wanted to offer a $1 level, not just a $3 level. So, all right. Masterwork patron. This is the $5 per month, which we already have one $5 per month patron. Thank you very much. You're getting a nice shout out on the next D&D and RPG video. You get your name and credits in the higher category in the videos. And you also get a shout out on the video, during the next D&D RPG video after. And it's not just going to be like I've seen people where they get like 20 patrons and they just read their name off. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you a good, real, genuine shout out. So patron with advantage, that's $10 per month. Then I will, in addition to everything we've already talked about, your name and credits will be in yet a higher category, and I will compose you a personal haiku as part of your in-video shout-out. And our very first patron, who's already jumped in there, and probably people that jump in early patrons will probably get this anyway. I'll probably do a few haikus no matter what the level is. And then finally, we have the patron of many things. That's $25 or more per month. And you get everything we've already talked about, including the haiku. Your name will be in credits in the producer category, and you'll get priority in response to chat comments during live streams. So if you're a patron of many things or higher, you will absolutely get priority to me responding to comments and stuff during live streams. And then patron plus 5, that's $50 or more per month. I don't expect anybody really to support at $25 or more or $50 or more a month, but I threw these on there just what the heck in case somebody wants to. You get priority in online game sessions. So those, if we hit that tier where I do monthly game adventures on a virtual tabletop, Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds or any of that, then these folks would get priority into getting into those game sessions. Named in the credits, an executive producer, and everything in the previous tiers. You get your name, you get a personal shout out and thank you on a video. You get in a haiku form, and then you get your name in the credits and all of that stuff. So there you go. That's the Patreon as it exists. I tried to give different options and throw some fun stuff in there, but I didn't. I'm not trying to again, I'm not trying to get rich or offer the world here. It's just a way for us to work together to get more of these videos out more often. So if you support, I really appreciate it. If not, again, I'll still make the videos. I just can't promise how often. So let's wrap up the rules crawl. Again, if you're in chat, you're more than welcome to put a chat in the video comments, and I will be happy to look up rules for you for D&D, or maybe another RPG if you have a question about another RPG, or give you my opinion on how to rule on things or whatever. So anyway, let's wrap up here. Bonus action spells. Big stuff. This one comes up a lot. So if you want to cast a spell that has a casting time of one bonus action, not one action, one bonus action, you can't cast any other spells before or after it on the same turn, except for cantrips with a casting time of one action. So one of the questions that comes up the most often in D&D is, how many spells can I cast in one round? And in 5th edition, the answer is the most you can ever cast in one round, unless there's just some crazy class feature or something out there that changes this. But the general rule is one bonus action spell and one cantrip. That's it. You can't, even though a spell is a bonus action, you can't cast a regular non-cantrip spell and then also cast a bonus action spell. You can't do that. Okay, so that's, I know it's confusing, but it's very important to know that. So that comes up a lot. And like I said, my group, we know this. We've talked about it a lot. Everybody knows it, but we still have to stop sometimes and think it out. So that's a good one to know. All right, concentration in spell casting. As soon as you start casting a spell or using a special ability that requires concentration, your concentration on another effect ends instantly. Okay, you can't have two effects or spells up that require concentration at the same time. So if you've thrown a spell, I think web is concentration, just off the top of my head. Boom, you got web out there, you're concentrating to keep it going. Then if you cast a spell or do any kind of special ability or anything that requires concentration, as soon as you do that, the other one goes bye-bye. That other concentration drops. And of course, there's other ways to lose concentration, like through taking damage or, being confused or something like that, knocked out. So, all right, then finally, for this D&D Rules Crawl number 10, which is in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, under 10 Rules to Remember, temporary hit points. All right, temporary hit points aren't cumulative. In other words, they don't stack. If you have temporary hit points and receive more of them, you don't add them together, unless a game feature says you can. Okay, but in general, they don't add together. You decide which temporary hit points to keep. There you go. So if you have 20 temporary hit points and then something else gives you 25 temporary hit points, then you have to decide which ones you want to keep. And you may base it on how many temporary hit points, or you may base it on how long they're going to last, or whatever. But you have to choose one or the other. You don't all of a sudden have 45 temporary hit points. So there you go. All right. Well, that's the 10 rules to remember from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. I'm going to give it another minute or so here, watching chat, to see if anybody has any questions. I'll be happy to respond to or look up. And if not, I'll go ahead and end the stream, end the video. And again, if you're watching this after the fact, feel free to leave a comment in the video or on the video, and I'll try to answer any questions you have. And I really, if anybody supports the Patreon, I really do appreciate it. I'm trying to find a way to work with the community here. So, and I do appreciate that my first supporter is going to get a nice big shout out. And the first few supporters, really, because those are the people that really believe in you, usually the ones that jump in when nobody else is. So, all right, well, I'm not getting any chats. Thanks so much for watching Shane Plays, and we will catch you next time. I gotta get my little studio thing pulled up here. La la la. Okay, we are Is that her? I don't see. What's weird? It's not showing I'm live. No, I am live. Okay, weird. That's very weird. My end the stream button isn't enabled. It says go live, but I am live. So I don't know. What do I know? I'll put on my glasses of figuring stuff out. All right, we'll talk to y'all later. Catch you next time.